Welcome back, everybody, to another round of We Know Severance here on RHAP. We Know Scripted TV. We Know Severance.com. That's the feed you want to subscribe to make sure you never miss an episode of the We Know Severance podcast right here on RHAP. Today, we are talking about the anti-penultimate episode of Severance Season 2, starring the auntie herself, Harmony Cobell. I'm Josh Wigler, and flip my toboggan if that's not Dr. Amanda.
Hello, Josh. You'll pardon me. I was just huffing some ether over here.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I could smell it on you, and that's particularly bad because we're like in opposite states podcasting.
Wow. Yeah. I'm in a
wafting through the screen.
I'm in a state of ether-induced bliss. Wow, Josh, this was an interesting episode of Severance.
An interesting episode of Severance indeed. The great Dr. Melissa cannot join us for this one. We'll be back for the feedback show, which of course you can all get your theories and feedback in when you write in severancerhap@gmail.com. That's severancerhap@gmail.com. Amanda, a short and sweet vitriol episode of Severance, the only episode of Severance in which Adam Scott doesn't appear on screen, I believe.
That is likely true.
I can't imagine the exception to that.
I think you're right. We do get his voice at the very, very end. Of the episode.
We are not entirely markless, but we are largely markless and largely everybody else-less, as it is. If you thought that the only cure for your fever was more Cobell, I imagine you're cured. You got the Harmony Cobell episode here in season 2, episode 8, Sweet Vitriol. Dr. Amanda, your thoughts at this hour?
Well, I think, leading the charge for Where's My Harmony Cobell. I've been demanding her presence, and it has been delivered to us now in a fully Harmony Cobell episode. Yeah, Josh, we've talked a little bit about how maybe this season there have been a number of notable departures from what we had come to settle into as the Severance format, where we get a little bit of the severed floor, a little bit of the outside world, and we have this experience of seeing Mark as our first person point of view character in both of these different states. And that kind of template afforded us the ability to spend a lot of time with our beloved Innie Dillon and Innie Helly and Innie Irving, and have all that great kind of office comedy vibe that has always been a really special thing about Severance, is kind of like taking an office comedy and putting it in a little bit of a sci-fi thriller and giving you two great tastes that taste great together. This episode kind of had neither of those.
Like coffee and ether, elements. Two great tastes to taste great together.
This felt like a pretty different show, aside from the fact that we obviously have a lot of Lumon. We have Harmony Cobell as our main character, who's a really important part of the show, even if she hasn't been super present in season 2 so far. We get the weird kind of religious trappings of Keir. Sissy certainly talks like a weirdo, but I felt like the tone to this episode didn't quite hit the Severance sweet spot, even though it's visually very beautiful. It has a lot going for it, but I have to say, we wait a whole week for these episodes, and this felt like a little bit of just treading the water to try to get Harmony back in the action.
So my question, I suppose, is, does this episode work better for you and for anyone else that it might not work for? I'm not sure. I'm very interested to get the reactions from people to this episode, because it is... Last week, we were talking about an episode that felt like it really broke the mold and was really, really different from everything that we've gotten before. Now, I think we've got an episode that said, hold my sweet vitriol, my can of ether. And then Nicholas Hoult in Mad Max just sprayed it and went to Valhalla. It's a unique episode of the show. right after a unique episode of the
Mhm.
show. Is this like 2 episodes in a row? No Dylan, no Irving. Like, we're away from all of that for 2 episodes in a row now. Is that going to work for people? I'm not so sure. And I wonder if this works better if Harmony's episode is instead like Harmony's storyline this season. Like, if
Yes.
instead we're in
Yes.
Salt's Neck, right? Is where we are throughout this
We are
episode.
indeed in Salt's Neck,
If this is instead, like, throughout the season, we're checking in on Harmony and Salt's Neck, is this going to land better for people? Are we gonna be far afield from the reactions of people thinking that like, I don't know. It's hard for me to fully gauge right now. I know some people who are going to hate this episode, just like
Mm.
straight up. I
Yeah.
know currently one person in particular who I am strongly suspecting is not going to like this episode. But I think that there will also be people who love it. So I think that we've probably come upon, I was going to say maybe we've come upon our most divisive episode of the show thus far, but it might not be
Yeah.
that divisive. It's going to be hard for me to tell. It's not the
Yeah.
most successful episode for me either.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had the opportunity at the time of our recording to see what the audience reaction is to this one. This comes in as the shortest episode of season 2. I think maybe the shortest episode of the whole series at about 38 minutes.
It would be competitive with the finale of season 1, which was
Uh-huh.
also really short, but for a reason, right? It was a real-time
Mhm.
thriller. This is, not that.
This is a slow burn
Slow
in
burn.
Salt's Neck. And it did feel like there was, not a ton of plot to stuff into that
Harmony
38
Cobell
minutes.
invented the severance chip. Could it have been
That
an email? Is a question.
Uh-huh.
That's like the
Yeah.
point of the episode,
That's the
right?
point of
I
the
mean, there's other
episode.
points. I don't want to be glib. There's other stuff
Mhm.
certainly for us to pick apart. I think, like, looking at how these people who, this was a Lumon town. This was beyond a Lumon town. This is an Egan town. This is a
Mhm.
very, like, I think, like, a part of the world just opened up in an interesting way. And look at what this town got in exchange for its reverence. Not
Right.
a lot. And so I think a very compelling commentary on our world and the types of people that you put in power that you think are going to be your champion and are the exact opposite. Instead, they are like your doomsday maker. So there's stuff in here for sure. The great James LaGrosse, Jane Alexander, great actors in this episode.
Mhm.
But the point is essentially like, okay, Harmony designed the severance chip. Not a nothing revelation, but could it have been an
Yeah, I think that this will end up being a big one on lore, on what is the lore of the show in terms of, what is the reach of the Egans and Lumon and, how this ties into the teachings of Kier. I think that this is going to be a big one for the social commentary of the show about what are the consequences of this kind of capitalistic pursuit of bringing industry. The town was nothing before the factory came here. Well, but now what is the town?
Yeah.
Now that that's shut down, we hear, more about like child labor and other things that Lumon has done and are, obviously dubious practices. There's lots of allegory for actual businesses and industries that exist in our world and questioning that. We can talk about, similarities and differences between ether and the severance chip, which have come up before. But while I think that the show has a lot of this, I do think that this probably would have been more successful for me and maybe other viewers if this was, half of the episode or
Yeah.
woven into parts of another episode.
Yes. I think so as well. So perhaps a shorter and sweeter, if not more vitriolic
Oh.
recap than usual. But let's go through the episode and unpack it as we go. And I'm very excited for the theories and feedback show this week to get
Mhm.
everybody's opinions on this one and what they learned here today. So
Mhm.
let us begin on our way to Salt's Neck. Population, how many I don't think the sign says.
It didn't say. It said thanks for visiting.
It did say thanks for visiting.
Mhm.
How many people do you think on the reg are going to
Ooh.
Salt's Neck?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I in terms of, like, for a vacay, Josh,
Yeah.
like, is this a destination?
I bet that they got decent ice skating
Uh-huh,
opportunities.
uh-huh. Yeah, it looks beautiful, if not, like, very, very stark and
Yes.
very, very cold. Like, I have to imagine that this is one where they might have gone to Canada for
Mm.
the location here. Not the speculated location of the town of Kier, but we know from a previous episode that Harmony has driven hundreds of miles to
Yes.
reach this destination.
Yes, it took her quite the ways to get here, and she was able to get here in her apparently highly recognizable vehicle.
Mm.
Would you be able to spot this car in a lineup?
Well, this is a Volkswagen Rabbit, I
Yeah.
believe.
Okay, so it sounds
Uh,
like you can.
well, I'll say that this is
You a cars
notable.
person? Secret cars person, Dr.
No, I
Demo?
am not as I am so not a
Call her
cars
Lightning
person.
McQueen, she's a secret cars person.
I claim to suffer from car blindness. I will get in and out of a person's car multiple times and never register what kind of
Yeah.
car that is, but I do have, like, a penchant for old Volkswagens. That's, like, my weird thing about me, and
Oh my
Harmony
gosh.
Harmony drives a white rabbit, Josh.
Yeah.
It's a white rabbit. That's,
Ah, okay.
like a
Yep.
literary thing.
I understand. A literary thing I get for sure. Great moment when she is driving through and we're seeing Salt's Neck for the first time, and there is this really beautiful version of the like a haunting version of the Cure hymn. I don't know if we've ever not heard a haunting version of it, but it's sort of like there's like a sweetness to it. I feel like there's like a
Yeah.
softer note to the Cure hymn here.
It's becoming, Harmony's theme is this
Yes.
cure him, and I thought that this was sort of a sweet, gentle version of it.
Yes. So I don't know what that's supposed to set us up for. I mean, it's a homecoming, right? We're no flashbacks, but we are getting the
Yeah.
Harmony origin story in many ways.
And
Like a
I
lot of
imagine, yeah, that this was probably a song, like a childhood song that kids would sing around Salt's Neck
yeah, in the
on the play
factory,
yard. Yes, in
whistling
the
while they
fact
work.
around the vats.
Yes, back in the day when we were chums. So Harmony is going to park her car and very aggressively brush her teeth. I thought that this was an
Mhm.
aggressive brushing.
I
Is it
mean,
because she hasn't
Harmony
gone to get her
yeah.
teeth cleaned by Dr. Maurer in a minute?
Harmony Cobell can inject a certain urgency and venom into the most mundane of acts. I think
Yeah,
it's really one of her skills.
yeah. While she is the protagonist of this episode, she never stops being Harmony Cobell. I do think that's one thing I really appreciate about this episode is that, like, even as she's on her version of a hero's quest, she is here
Mm.
to find a very specific piece of the puzzle for the show. She's never like not just sort of takes no bullshit, kind of scary. Don't want her looking at you sideways. Then buy me a cup of coffee. Then hard brushing Harmony Cobell. At
Mhm.
least like consistency is king with this character.
Yeah, love me some Patty Arquette.
Yes. So Patty Arquette, our first clue that that one of the activities, one of the if you go on like Viator or you go on like if they've got like Klook here and you're trying to like get like some like tourist activities in Salt Neck,
Mhm.
do you think like a tour of the best sites to huff gas
Huff
would be
either, yeah.
one of the things on offer because we see our first guy just huffing fumes, getting high, and dropping to the ground.
Yeah, this is a town that is struggling quite a bit, Josh. Like we learn more about like this is where the ether mill was. I didn't know that you mill ether. I'm not sure exactly what the ether manufacturing process entails, but
Yeah.
ether is a is a not it's a substance that people inhale and it's highly addictive. It was used to put people under for medical procedures. It's highly addictive. There's I looked up a little bit about what some of the symptoms are of
Yeah.
ether dependency. But we get the impression that this is something that was this kind of put the town on the map. This was where the big ether came from. And just like we see in a lot of towns that have been ravaged by the opioid crisis or other epidemics of substance dependency, they really, put their mark on this town, and the people have fallen on tough times. It seems like there's no more economic activity to sustain the town now that Lumon is no longer in the ether business, but they have left a trail of devastation and dependency behind.
I had forgotten that ether had already been mentioned on the
Yeah.
show, and that this is where that Kier and
You're an Imogen.
his wife Imogen, not Poots,
Mhm.
met here on the job. There's if you search if you just search ether mill, Amanda, at
Mhm.
least for me, top results that show up are Severance Reddit threads are the very first
Yep.
thing that come up. A post from 3 years ago by Toast and Jam 11 is the top note, with a comment from 27 days ago from CM Trent 1595 saying an ether mill was mentioned in season 2 episode 4 and I was hunting for answers. So a 3-year thread that got resurrected a month ago that is only
Wow.
probably going to get more active today and through the weekend.
Indeed. And I did also, Josh, in my research on ether mills, find that same Reddit post. And if you look in the comments, somebody points out that diethyl ether sounds a lot like Dieter Egan, suggesting that maybe Kier's experience with his brother was actually an ether-induced hallucination. But
interesting.
Other things we know about Imogen and Kier is that
Isn't brain imaging a thing? Isn't that a thing?
Yes, neuroimaging.
Mhm.
That I think that there's that one of the paintings, one of them has some sort of lung disease. I think Imogen might die from it, but that there's some insinuation that maybe the exposure to ether that is common in this town, there's jokes about hacking up a lung, that perhaps this is some, noxious chemical that is causing a lot of disease in addition to the addiction. And it might have even struck close to Kier's family.
Yeah. Devin is calling. We will answer the call by the end of the episode, but right now Harmony is not picking up the phone. What do you think it is that causes her to pick it up later if she's ignoring it now? Is she just like too mission oriented?
She's
She's like,
a
I got a
woman
thing
on a
to do.
mission,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
like, she didn't have time for that.
I'll call you back. So we're gonna go to this diner nearby. And we're going to see all of these various denizens of this place. There's a woman with oxygen tubes, immediately evocative of what we do know up to this moment about Harmony's past. There's the tubes that are correlated with like her Egan shrine back when she was living in housing next to Mark. So we see a woman like that. We see James LaGrosse is the actor who I love. This guy, anytime he pops up in anything, I'm always happy. Great role on Justified is probably the first character that comes to mind when I think of him. Hampton, I think, is his name.
Is this Harmony's love interest?
Yeah, Hampton.
I thought does he have a name? The only thing I ever saw him referred to in the closed captioning of what I watched was Waiter. So I did not know if he was a named character. I don't think we hear his name.
When the car is coming at the end of the episode, she looks at him and says, Hampton. And I don't know if that's like the guy in the car that's on the way, or if she's like, sweet Hampton. Like that's his name. I want to believe
Interesting.
he looks like a Hampton.
He looks like a Hampton. I was thinking maybe that was another destination, but I don't know. I like the idea of calling him Hampton. Very striking eyes on
Very striking
Hampton.
eyes, really great eyes. Terrific actor in so many different things. So we could just call him James LaGrosse for now,
Mhm.
and or waiter until it is verified that he is or is not
Hampton.
Hampton. But James LaGrosse as the waiter, he seems to be like, sort of certainly the mayor of this diner, if not this town.
Drippy
Um,
pot coffee. Yeah, that's the name of the
yes,
place.
and he is going to be greeted by an old chum. Harmony Cobell comes in. Everyone sort of like eyes wide on Harmony Cobell. Known character around these parts,
Mhm.
Harmony Cobell. She walks in and says to her old friend, Harmony Cobell, well, flip my toboggan. I guess that's her impression of James LaGrosse.
Mhm. Mhm. She's like, "I'll just say what we're all thinking,
Yeah.
which is flip my toboggan."
I don't think we're using flip my toboggan nearly enough as a society.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, this is another good one. I do have a running list of things that from the show that I should definitely start saying more. Like fetid moppet, was
Yeah,
that
fetid
what we
moppet.
that was a good one.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Um, there was what kind of rube was it? Some kind of rube.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me anymore, but Rube, just the word Rube should
Uh-huh,
probably
yeah.
be coming back. She's asked if she wants a coffee. She says no. He says, well, the tables are for paying customers. And so she says, okay, then buy me a coffee.
Yeah. I mean,
Wow.
this is a woman who means business, you
Yeah.
know?
I just love how, like, here she is, high paying Lumen job, you would imagine, or at least paying Lumen job, rolls into this town and has the audacity to say to this man, no, you buy me a cup of coffee.
Also, you have to imagine, like, I would really want a cup of coffee. Like, I don't know when her last pit stop was.
Yeah.
I haven't seen
She did
her
just brush
stop.
her teeth.
She brushed her teeth, like, so, but have we seen any car snacks, any bags of chips,
I've
any
detected zero snacks or chips.
I mean, this has been a long car ride. There's not a lot of pit stops on that road. We saw how long and desolate it was. I would be itching for some diner food at this
Yeah, I would
point.
think so. Yeah, like I would show up and be like, mott sticks, Greek
Yeah,
salad,
yeah.
turkey club.
Ooh, is that your diner order? Mott sticks, Greek
Not
salad,
all
turkey
at
club?
once. That's a lot of food. But I would get
Uh-huh.
any one of those things and be
Yeah,
thrilled.
I'm a big Greek salad
I
at a
love a Greek
diner
salad.
person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
A spanakopita, maybe that could be good.
Ooh, yeah. You think they got good spanakopita at the Drippy
In salt,
Pot?
in salt snack. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
I bet they do. Um, so she says that this town it's older and frailer than I remember. And we find out that there were market readjustments from a few
Mhm,
years back, fluctuating interest rates. There was a retrenchment from the core infrastructure investments. I feel
mhm.
like I understand neuroscience better than I understand everything that was said just now.
Yeah, I think he's being a little flip here. I think he's like, "This is a shit town. You know
Yeah.
what happened here. You know Lumen left us and we got nothing going on."
Yeah. She needs a favor from him.
Mhm.
And she doesn't even like, she says, meet me at the factory. And she gets up and leaves. And there's like no extra effort being put into convincing him or anything. She just assumes that he's going to make good on the favor.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, yeah. Well,
instantly he gets up and he says, close the bar. I got stuff to do.
I mean, look, he bought the cup of coffee. That was her foot in the door. She knows
Yeah.
she's got him.
Yeah.
I mean, so the favor that he asks for, we can talk about they're going to go to the Lumen exterior of the old Lumen factory to have this conversation. Harmony is claiming that she needs somebody to drive her to Sissy's house
Yes.
because they're watching and they'll see that she goes
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Um, Josh, like, does this add up. If
Not to me,
they're
no.
watching Sissy's house so closely that they would know that Harmony Cobell's white Volkswagen Rabbit has pulled up to Sissy's house, but they're not surveilling up to the moment where she enters this town that has exactly one road in
I would
it.
have that road staked out. I'd be
Yeah.
like all eyes on that like visitor sign would probably, but I
Mhm.
think I have some issues with surveillance on this show generally.
Right.
I think that this is highlighting for me, you know, Harmony probably should have been able to find Petey back in season 1. I feel like
Yeah.
if there are eyes, if Mark is the most important person in the world, there should probably be eyes on his house, and Ragabi should not be able to be down there. So maybe just we just have to like sort of like magic wand the notion of
Yeah.
surveillance.
There's a
The
little
surveillance
bit,
state of
right.
EE is a little unusual to me.
There's like magical plot surveillance rules in Severance that when it was only happening on the severed floor, I was willing to like say, okay, this could just be a Lumon mind game, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that they're messing with them, they're saying things that aren't true. Maybe they are seeing them and acting sometimes and not others. But this doesn't make sense as like, if we apply that logic. So I do struggle with understanding exactly what the function is of getting Hampton involved at all, aside from the fact that we wanted Harmony to get a little smooch and we needed somebody to bounce some of this exposition off of.
Yeah. I think it's probably that. I think that's probably what it ultimately ends up being. I'm going to be really interested to know like the backstory behind the creation of this episode at some point. I think that the podcast with Ben and Adam is going to be a really good fount of information on this one. So we shall see. We go to the factory, and here at the factory, an old Lumon factory, Harmony and her old chum, they get out of the car. He says, "Do you have any idea how effed it is that you asked me to come here?" And she says, "I need you to drive me to the 9. The 9 is this a community? Is the 9? Is it a church?
There's the 9, the 9 core Lumon principles.
Right, but what is that just like the name of the housing here, or is that like is this like Church of Egan
the
stuff?
Church of Egan, yeah.
Yeah. So he says, "Why would I help you with anything?" She says, "We were once chums. Old colleagues lift each other up." And he says, "Colleagues? It was effing child labor." But then she tries to appeal to his inner sense of romance. Kira and Imogen met at the ether mill. Wink, wink.
Yeah, look at those two crazy kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so I think that there is like obviously they have a smooch later. There is some romantic tension between these characters. Hampton sort of exists to represent somebody who was kind of chewed up and left behind by Lumon.
Yes.
And rather than being a devoted believer, the way we know Harmony Cobell is in the teachings of Keir, he is in fact somebody who hates Lumon, hates Keir, has turned his back on the religion, but he's still sort of stuck in Salt's Neck because of his circumstances.
Yeah. She smells the ether on him. She says it's pathetic, which feels especially harsh considering she got out, he did not. But also feels very Harmony Cobell. So it feels very in line with the character. He ultimately agrees. He's gonna hide her in the truck bed under a tarp. She keeps getting calls from Devin. When they finally get to the house that she's going towards, she gets out of the car. She says, "You're higher than a bearded vulture."
Yeah, that's another good one, Josh. Yeah. Higher than a bearded vulture.
I guess they go. I would think that they'd go kind of low, ready for the kill, ready to eat the stuff.
That's true. That's true. And then are the bearded ones, though, the ones that had to go particularly high?
Yeah, I think that might be it. It's like some sort of buoyancy. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know my bird anatomy that well. she's going to go into Sissy's house after maybe Hampton says, tell her to drop dead for me. That's all he has to say to her. And here we go. A blast from Harmony's past. This woman, Celestine Sissy Cobell, a relative, as played by Jane Alexander. Do we know what the relation is here between Sissy and Harmony?
Yeah, new character alert. I think that there's two options on the board. This could be a sister who's
a literal sissy,
a literal sissy, a sissy sister, Sissy McSisterson. This woman, Sissy, looks a good deal older than Harmony, but not so much older than Harmony that she couldn't be her sister. So that's on the board. I think I favor that this is an aunt in honor of the auntie penultimate
yes, I want to
episode
believe that as well.
that we meet Harmony's auntie, because we're going to get a lot of discussion around Harmony's mother and her mother's last days, and there's a way that Sissy talks about her that I have to think like she might not talk about her mother without, maybe siblings might feel differently about their parents and have harsh things to say about it. But there's something about the tone and the way she relates to Harmony that made me think that perhaps this is an aunt. What's your feeling?
Yeah, that was my read as well, and I think that fits nicely with a lot of the theming of the show. I think that there's something to siblings on this show, whether it's Mark and Devin or the story of Kieran Dieter.
Oh yes,
so I think having Harmony like come face to face with someone that is so reminiscent of her mother, but isn't her mother, feels like that's sort of in line with the theming of doubles and all of that here. So that would be my guess as well on the first pass. Also a marked age gap between the two. Patricia Arquette, 56 years old. Jane Alexander, 85. It's giving aunt to me.
It's giving aunt.
It's giving aunt to me. Sissy is not particularly thrilled to see Harmony here. And if you thought Harmony was a true believer, here's matron Sissy, where she says, I don't want that huff peddler on my property. Harmony says you gave him the thirst for it. So what does that mean?
I don't know.
Would she like calm him down with ether maybe?
Yeah, it's not clear what like Hampton's relationship was with the rest of Harmony's family. Like, were they chums? Were they closer than chums? Like, he seems to have strong feelings and not a big fan of Sissy. And is the you gave him the thirst for it? Is this Sissy in particular, or is this something about like just Lumon's presence in the town and what it did to everybody?
Yeah, like the royal you did this. Yeah. She's here to look for her things, my stuff. She wants her stuff back. Apparently it's gone. Sold to the poor.
Sold to the poor. And it looks like there's quite a lot of poor people that we could sell things to. Harmony is looking for something very specific. We don't know what it is at this point, but she's very curious about it, whether anybody's been there or called. And we find out that a Mr. Drummond has inquired about her. Harmony wants to know more about this, and Sissy is just disgusted with Harmony. What did you do, you little mouse? It's very like
what did you do, you little mouse?
And this is an antagonistic relationship, and Harmony wants to see her mother's room.
But the problem there is that the room is supposed to stay shut until all who remember her sit with Kier. So the idea here is that Harmony's mother's room is off limits until anyone who ever knew Harmony's mother is dead.
Yeah, and is this just the common way of treating the dead in the Kier religious mythology? We've never heard Christianity. We've never heard anything about this before. Or is she lying to Harmony? Like, Harmony eventually gets in there. I have to imagine it would be, like, super, super dusty if nobody's been in there and, like,
Yeah.
given it the once over.
I'd
So
be
that's
very careful
interesting.
about, huffing anything in
No.
this room. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She demands the key. She also wants to know what her last words were. And she says she said nothing after you pulled the tube from her gullet. Sissy smacks Harmony.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty harsh. So I mean, some details here, and I think that a lot of this is just confirming things that we had speculated about. Um, Harmony's mother is probably the woman who was Charlotte Cobell, was the hospital bracelet that we saw on Harmony's shrine to Kier back in season 1.
Yep.
We also noted that Harmony had a breathing tube as part of that shrine. It's the breathing tube that she was carrying in her car on the way to Salt's Neck, and she
Yep.
has it here with her. Eventually, she's going to get into the room and hook it up to the breathing machine. But we find out that she was being kept alive through this connection to the breathing tube. A lot of allusions to different kind of pulmonary diseases that probably have to do with environmental toxin exposure from Salt's Neck being the site of this factory. Is this because of people abusing ether, or is it because of other things just living in the town that are causing respiratory diseases? It seems like maybe a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B.
Yep.
But Harmony's mother died in Salt's Neck in this house, and this has definitely been a preoccupation of Harmony's. Now that we have Sissy in the mix, we find out that Sissy was the one who was there with her in her final moments, and there's quite a bit of bitterness and resentment there from Harmony.
Yeah. Sissy's going to suggest that Harmony's mother was not a true believer. So there is some element to her that didn't quite align with the rest of Christianity or Curism.
Mhm.
Harmony, we're going to find out that she wasn't here to care for her mother. She was in school. Sissy said that's where you belonged. Your studies were more important. And Mr. Egan saw Kier in you. Which Egan would that be? Did somebody see potential in Harmony and lift her
Mm.
up to put her into some sort of advanced schooling?
Yeah, I mean, we get more, like, of the artifacts of Harmony's life throughout this episode, and we do see pictures of Harmony with James Egan, Helena's father. So I think it's pretty likely that this Mr. Egan that Sissy is referring to is James Egan himself.
Yeah. So she and James go way back. They were chums, perhaps, if not
Mm,
colleagues. They're colleagues. They were colleagues until recently. He saw in her the Wintertide Fellowship. Not the first time we're
yeah.
hearing Wintertide Fellowship.
This is the fellowship that Miss Wong is hoping to receive a positive recommendation from Mr. Milchek in order to go on such a fellowship herself. So we had speculated that, we knew that Harmony attended Kier. I'm sorry, it was Myrtle Egan School for Girls.
Yep.
And then we find out that she was a valedictorian of that school, which we see in the yearbook later. She went on to win
The
the
Cobell Peace
Wintertide
Prize.
the Cobell Peace Prize, the Wintertide Fellowship. So a very, very esteemed and illustrious career, and it looks like Miss Wong is on the path to do the same.
Do you think she might be from Salt's Neck? And that is like, is just like picking people from this town? This place
Mm,
probably doesn't have much use of a crossing guard, but if they did need
that's
one,
true.
they could
Yeah.
just send a child to do the job, and this town doesn't seem afraid of child labor.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this kind of gets to the question we've been consistently coming back to throughout both seasons of the show, which is like just how big is the wider world in which Severance takes place, because We know Kier PE a little bit, right? We don't know it super well, but we know a little bit about that. Now we know that a few hundred miles away, there's Salt Neck, which is a very different kind of town, still super connected to Lumon. And, you know, if we're to believe some of the Lumon propaganda, there are, you know, hundreds of other countries that have Lumon offices in them and lots of other towns. So, I mean, if James Egan, the man himself, is, you know, selecting people for a fellowship, I have to think he's looking a little bit broader than just this podunk town where everybody's hopped up on ether.
Harmony is going to infiltrate her mother's bedroom. She finds the key that she's looking for. I found it. I'm the one who found it. She enters her mother's room. There's a hospital bed. She looks in the closet. We see some things, right? Like we see a picture of her as a kid in her school uniform. She's going to take the breathing tube out of her pocket and plug it into the machine, and she is going to lie down in the bed and cry and fall asleep. It stands to reason that she is exhausted. She did not drink the coffee, and she's been driving probably since last we saw her.
Yeah, and if we're doing like a check-in, because eventually Hampton, who I've decided this is his
We've
name,
decided
and
he's Hampton.
He's Hampton. You know, Hampton has been outside in the freezing cold for hours.
Yes.
Hours and hours now. This is not how humans actually behave when it's that cold outside.
No, I think that if it were me, I wouldn't have much more than like 5 minutes worth of patience before I'm like, are you done?
Yeah. Or I'm just going to get out of here and go back and get that coffee from the drippy pot.
But maybe that just speaks to the powerful connection between these two. Is Hampton
love.
just like, you know, he's smitten.
Old chums.
Old chums die hard. Eventually he does bust in, and like you hear that there's like some scuffling downstairs between him and Sissy. He says it was cold as shit in the truck and I gotta get back. But she needs to find it. She needs to find it, whatever it is.
Yeah, we still don't know what she's looking for, but Hambone.
Hambone says, "Want to get high?"
Want to get down with some ether.
Yeah, you down with the ether? Oh, I don't know. What is it? Are you chicken? I'm not a chicken. You're a goat.
Do you know that Rob McElhenney was the kid in that PSA?
No, stop that. No.
Yes.
No, that's not true.
I'm like 80% sure.
All right, we're gonna have to vet that and investigate for the theories and feedback show here.
That is going to be most of what I'm ready to talk about on the theories and feedback
we'll have to roll the clip. I don't have it prepared right now, but remind me and I'll get the clip ready. We'll relitigate that for sure. It's a real testament, I think, to our feelings of the episode that we're talking about that.
It's not, not my usual posture on a Severance recap.
No. So he gets high, she gets high. I haven't done that since I was 8. Wow, starting young.
She needed that Rob McElhenney PSA.
She really did. Yeah.
All right. It wasn't that one. It was like, it's a think. There is a Rob McElhenney anti-smoking PSA.
But
I don't know
there's no way that he was, I'm not chicken, you're a turkey. Okay, that's definitely Rob McElhenney saying, think, don't smoke. Okay.
Yeah, we have to go back to the tape
we have to
eventually.
We have to go back. So I haven't done this since I was 8. He says, "Oh, you ready to man the vent for the next 10 hours?" Gosh, that must have been a lovely job that these two had.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, child labor can mean a lot of things, right? Like, I mean, but this is some like some industrial revolution, like this is why we need organized labor, people. This is why we need strong unions. And this was like one of the early wins for organized labor, was protecting child labor and having reasonable work days. But we find out that in this universe, when Harmony Cobell was an 8-year-old child, which was, you know, less than 40 years ago, there were 8-year-olds doing manual hard labor in toxic environments for 10 plus hours a day.
Yes. Yeah. I think Severance might take place in the future. That's my that's my prediction here.
Our future.
Our future.
In our future.
Our future. She tells him it's shameful that you sell it. And then they smooch. We got a little action here for Harmony and Cobell. Who would be in the throuple with these two?
Oh, well, we know that
Harmony's the throuple gal.
Yeah, she's a throuple gal. She was pursuing Mark's innie and outie. So
Yeah.
maybe we have like a quadruple going on here. I'm trying to think. I mean, Miss Selvig had a husband who made her a blueprint for her afterlife house.
Right.
So I don't know if Selvig and her late husband are somehow involved in this as well.
Could be. She decides that no one would have thrown this away, this thing that she's looking for. So we go outside. There's like some sort of, it's like the garage or like the subterranean layer that they enter that's just like filled with mementos, annual reminiscences. We see she was the valedictorian, as you mentioned. She won the Jamie Egan Wintertide Fellowship. There's a teddy bear here. We see a Jamie Egan bust. We see a trophy. And then she opens the trophy and something comes out. And that seems to be exactly what she is here looking for. And she charges back inside and tells Sissy, I'm leaving. Don't tell anyone I was here. We didn't say this, but Sissy's been in touch with Mr. Drummond. She says, don't tell anyone I was here. Sissy, this, if Harmony's a little mouse, Sissy's a big rat. Sissy says,
yes,
I would never bear falsity to a steward of the Egans.
The steward of the Egans.
Rat.
Yeah. She's not cool. Not a big Sissy fan. Like I said, I wanted more Cobell. I never said anything about
I don't need
Sissy.
any Sissy ever.
I don't need any Sissy at all.
No.
Yeah, they have some like confrontation here. Harmony says Lumon destroyed this town. You owe them no loyalty. But Sissy bites back. There was no town before the factory. And she says, what about your employ? Look at everything you've accomplished. You owe that to the Egans as fealty. And Harmony says, fealty? My designs. And then we see, as she's brandishing her lab notebook, that there's the circuit blueprint, the base code, the overtime contingency, the Glasgow block, all of it.
Yes. Is this a big shock to you that it seems like Harmony Cobell refined the chip and has been the architect of much of the Severance technology? Or is that what we're to take away here?
I did not see this coming, but this is, I think, absolutely what we're supposed to leave this episode with. Harmony invented all of the technology behind Severance. It was her work. Yeah.
This, I feel like, really shifts a lot of my opinion about the character. I have a lot of questions that I've yet to fully process here about Harmony being the person responsible for this and somehow then winding up in middle management, right? And like having kind of been, it seems like, booted into a lesser office at the very start of the show, very interested in reintegration, somebody who's who the very idea of her involvement makes possibly a fugitive Ragabi hit the road because she doesn't want to get involved any further with this person. It just raises a lot of questions about what put Harmony in this position to begin with. Is it some sort of continued sense of ownership, not just over the Cold Harbor project, potentially, not just over the MDR employees, not just over Mark Scout himself, but over Severance as a concept, as a notion?
Yeah, it's more Q's than A's for sure. And this will be a really juicy one to dig into with theories and feedback. But I mean, I have to say my spidey sense went up a little bit when, at the Chinese restaurant at our favorite Zufu, when when Helena meets Mark Scout, outie Mark, and he, sort of says, you invented this, innovative surgical procedure. And she says, no, 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 my father did. And I felt like it was like a little bit of a weird point to have underlined at that particular moment in time. And, I'm not at all surprised that James Egan, the CEO of a company, would take credit for work that was not his own. That's another thing that happens in our very real world.
Yes.
So the idea that Harmony, I think, particularly as a woman, might be, and particularly with what we know about the Egan family, that her work would be co-opted and passed off as James Egan's. I think it definitely checks out that James Egan is not necessarily the brilliant engineer and inventor, that this was the work of somebody else. But I think you're right, Josh, that there's something that's a little bit of a mismatch between like what Harmony's role is and what her background is like
Right.
obviously like a brilliant engineer and inventor, and she ends up doing this. And it made me wonder a little bit about whether Harmony's intention for how Severance was going to be used was not in line from the start with how Lumon wanted to use that. And
Right.
perhaps that, like, as her self-preservation, and we saw in her previous confrontation with Helena, that they've tried to kind of bury her in these places where she couldn't do damage. Like, she's going to be part of some some board that they're just inventing to keep her busy. And she was kind of trying to see if she could continue to pursue her own initial aims via the position that she was given.
Sure. It's like I had an old a colleague of mine, a chum, if you will, who
Oh.
was one of like the best reporters that I had ever worked with. Just like a very, very competent, strong with a great writer's voice, who got promoted eventually to being like middle management, and like was not as good at that job. But
Mhm, mhm,
that's sort of a path that some like
mhm.
success can like kind of like fail you laterally, I guess,
Yeah,
if not
yeah.
slightly upward. And so that tracks, like that happens, that people in success often then get like plugged into positions that aren't the right fit and aren't actually like
Mhm,
seizing on the things that someone's talents are built around, but B, maybe around the things that they're actually interested in either.
mhm,
And so some of that would track with Harmony. It being punitive to some extent would track with Lumon.
mhm,
Lumon putting people who are maybe a little bit in over their heads in charge of this all important Cold Harbor project actually seems to have some track record now at this
right,
point
right.
too. I just think that the answer for how Harmony is the inventor and the engineer and the visionary behind Severance technology, how that lines up with her then becoming the head of the Severance floor and seemingly
Mhm,
not involved in the tech side of it at all, and now
mhm,
being only involved in like the people management side. Um, I need that explanation to be great. I think that
mm.
explanation needs to be great, because it is a disconnect for me right now. It's a
Yeah,
bit of a disconnect.
yeah, I think that that's very, very fair. And again, like, yeah, we've talked about this as the severance floor, but now we know that there's so many different severance floors, right?
Right.
So this isn't even like Harmony is in charge of like the one place where they're doing this. There's actually, versions of this all over the world, and she just has this small team that she's supervising. So really interesting. I want to like just use this episode also to kind of reflect on the way that people talk in this show.
Yes.
And I'm always like trying to keep track of, okay, who's talking like a normal person and who is not. And now as the world of Severance grows, and now we've seen another place, Salt Neck, um, Hampton is pretty much talks like a normal person.
Yes.
Sissy, decidedly not talking like
Correct.
a normal person. Um, do we have enough information yet, Josh, to hypothesize that it's people who go up through this very specific kind of lumen education, this very like Kirsten
Yeah.
Christian kind of parochial school education that are taught to speak in this bizarre dialect?
It tracks with all of the Lumon employees, basically, that are the unsevered ones, at least Milchick, Drummond.
Mhm.
It tracks with Harmony now as well. I guess I'm thinking about Rickon maybe as
Rickon
somebody,
talks kinda weird, yeah.
and do we know enough about his background to theorize what was his? I mean, we've always joked about secret board member, secret Egan, Rickon.
Yeah.
Um, is it just that like he's just like a little snooty and that's just how he talks, or is there
Mhm.
more of a connection there? He's the first outlier that comes to mind for me when I
Mhm.
think about it, because otherwise I'm really on board with this. It would make Irving very interesting
Right,
if this
exactly.
is something of Irving's background as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, something to keep an eye on, like of the severed employees, some of them talk very strange. Like when we met Gwendolyn Christie's character, Lorne, she did not talk like a normal person. So I think it's like interesting to see, is the show going to give us more context that will make that kind of sorting check out?
Yeah, we shall see. Um, Sissy, this rat, is going to try and throw the notebook in the fire to demolish any evidence that Harmony Cobell designed Severance. Because, of course, as everybody has heard, Jamie Egan was the inventor of Severance.
Mhm.
And Sissy's looking at it all and saying, "Why did you never talk about this?" And she says, "Well, I was told Kier's knowledge is for all. And if I sought credit, I'd be banished." So she tries to throw it in the fire, and then Harmony wrestles it back. And thank God, if we had come all this
Yeah. Oh my
way,
god.
could you imagine if we came all this way and
I
left
spent
the episode?
38 minutes in Salt's Creek for this.
I would have been really upset. I would have
Yeah.
been very upset if that thing had gone in the fire. There was
Oh
like
god.
half a second where I was like about to stand
I
up.
rewound because I needed to make sure it did not go in the fire.
Oh, I was not thrilled. So Sissy is going to say, she's going to say, "It was your hand that removed the tube from your mother, not mine. Your mother was a coward, more sick in the soul than the body, full of malice and resentment. I thought you were different. I thought you were my flower. I tried to help you grow. Now I see you are weak, just as she was." Some harsh words between Sissy and Harmony in what could very well be the final time they see each other.
Yeah, and I would not be opposed to this being the final time that we
Correct.
see
Me
Sissy.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, no love lost between Sissy and Harmony. No love lost between Sissy and Harmony's mother, who I think her name is Charlotte. But you know, Harmony wishes she had been here with her mother. I mean, this is obviously like we see that this is something that's been weighing heavily on this character going back to season 1 when she sees her mother's bed, her hospital bed that she died
Yep.
in. She's very moved. She, you know, cries herself to sleep, clutching the breathing tube. She even puts it in her mouth, Josh. Like this is, you know, so she's having like an extremely visceral experience and obviously blames Sissy for the end of her mother's life, but also feels a lot of guilt that she wasn't actually there, that she was pursuing her education and her career. But Sissy, very, very devoted to Kier, kind of like trying to give Harmony Cobell a run for her money. Charlotte, not a fan.
Not a fan.
Not a fan of Kier.
Not a fan of Kira at all. Um,
Not into the 9. She was
not
did
into the
not,
nine.
yeah.
Not into the nine. She says 9 to the 9. Harmony's gonna go outside, and Hampton says somebody's coming, and he's gonna offer the truck. He's gonna give her the truck, like take the truck and go. And she says Hampton. So unless the guy who's showing up is Hampton, I think
Uh-huh.
this dude's
Yeah.
Hampton, and she goes Hampton,
Yeah. Um
Hampton.
Poor Hampton. Hampton like stood outside and this you got to imagine this is like well below freezing
Yes,
temperature. Like
yes.
we're talking like, I mean, if it's 20, that's
That's a
warm in
warm
Salt
day in
Creek. That's a
Salt Lake.
warm day in Salt Creek.
Yeah.
He waited outside for like, I don't know, 4 hours while she took a nap.
Yeah.
He didn't have the best outerwear, Josh. Like, he wasn't wearing his Ortbo suit. He's
No.
outside in the cold, and
Coulda used
then
a fur hat for sure.
goes inside, gets, like, one little baby smooch, a little huff of ether, and now she took his damn truck
Yeah. And
and
he's on
hasn't yeah.
property belonging to someone who hates him, and a Lumon
Uh-huh.
employee, some sort of surveiller is on the way.
That was, like, a bit of a hike too, like, where's he gonna go now?
Yeah,
Um,
it's gonna be a
yeah,
long walk home.
and
Should he
when
have just gotten in
has
the car with her?
I don't know. I don't know. You would imagine, right? And, like, my other question is, um, like, good on Harmony Cobell's cell phone battery is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, yeah, she is very I mean, maybe she just didn't use the phone at all, during
Mhm.
her drive.
Airplane mode, yeah. I
Eh,
mean, we know Devin's been I don't know.
low battery, like, the low power mode, all you
Yeah.
psychos who don't use low power mode,
Wow. Shots fired,
I'm
yeah.
just saying, it keeps your phone alive so much longer. What are you doing
Mhm.
not going in low
Yeah.
power? Uh,
How does the cold temperature, like, do for your
for
phone
my
battery?
I think that I've never tested it. I've never te
Yeah.
should I leave it
I've
outside?
I've definitely had my phone overheat a
Yes.
bunch of times
Yeah, yeah,
before.
yeah. Yeah, I've had that,
Yeah.
and it's always so scary where it's like, "Alert, your phone's
I know.
about to explode. It's about to go nuclear."
I have a car where the air conditioning doesn't work. Actually, now I think that both of our
Do you
cars,
know
the
what
air
kind of
conditioning
car you
doesn't
have,
work.
or you're that car blind?
I don't.
Yeah.
It's just the kind that doesn't have an air it's Volkswagen Rabbit or nothing. I have
Or
no
Volkswagen Rabbit
other
or bust. That's it.
exactly. Yeah, I drove like 4 hours once in this car, and I had to stop at, rest stops and put my phone in the refrigerator
Wow, 'cause it's
of,
that
like,
hot.
the drink refrigerator because it
Wow.
was gonna, like, melt or explode or something.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Great. If this is the final time we ever see Hampton,
Yeah,
Dianu, uh,
you know,
come and tame these tempers, assholes. Uh,
mhm.
line of the episode, I think, for me. Other than flip my toboggan.
I mean, Hampton could have been a hero, but I think that there was a little bit too much room for Hampton to breathe, a little bit
Yes.
too much of this plot line.
Well,
I
yeah, that's an
I
issue. What he's breathing in.
yes, that's true. He was breathing in a little bit too much ether.
Too much plot.
Yeah, well, we barely knew you, Hampton.
That seems to be it. Harmony
Mhm.
finally picks up the phone from Devin. She says that Mark's been reintegrating, and Cobell says, Ragabe. And she hasn't killed him yet. And she says, no, I think he's okay. We want to try something else. Put Mark on. And you do get finally, it's not a completely Mark free episode. He says, hello?
Mhm.
And she says, tell me everything.
Yeah.
And that's the episode. And she's driving back, presumably, to a final 2 episode team up with Mark and Devin. So
Yeah.
the setup I
Mhm.
love. I'm thrilled with the setup. Get her back in the mix, bring her with Mark and Devin. Having this information about her involvement in the Severance tech, it's interesting. It just needs to be like really explained to me a bit more, I think, at this point.
Mhm.
Um, do we need a whole episode for it? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not for me. Not for me. I hate to be on here being super negs, but it's just not my favorite episode of the show.
Yes, yes. I mean, look, we are big Sev heads. We
We're
are in
huge
the
Sev
tank.
heads.
We are in the
We're
tank for
constantly huffing
Severance.
Severance.
We are exactly.
You can smell it on us.
Uh-huh. Yes.
It's pathetic.
It is pathetic. No, I mean, like, we've been so in the ether tank for Severance. And I think it's fair to point out that this episode, and I think this season, we've talked about this a little bit with the character of Ragabi. It's you can see the seams a little bit. It's like you can see the places where there was a plot challenge that the writers had to write around.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising because this is such an ambitious, sprawling show, and the intricacies of where the plot is in season 2, and we've talked about this. We have characters that we're following their journey in innie and outie form. There's Lumon is this vast, corporation that is influencing all of these different areas of life. That's a huge task for a show to take on. And in the first season, I would posit it did that seamlessly. But, the first season ended with a huge plot exploding reveal that most of season 2 has had to, deal with the aftermath of that.
Yeah.
And it's a big task. And I think that it's mostly doing an incredible job. The things that Severance does better than anybody else, it's continuing to do better than anyone else. And this was a visually stunning episode directed by Ben Stiller. Actually reminded me a lot of Escape at Dannemora as much as it reminded me of other Severance
That's interesting. I
episodes
can see that for
in
sure.
terms of like the visual language
Totally.
of the show. But, there are these clunky bits, and it felt like this was 38 minutes that needed to get Patricia Arquette back in the action. And that ever since she gets sort of threatened or fired or promoted by Helena, the show has had a problem with keeping her in the periphery while it had so much else to do. So we have 2 more episodes left, and I expect that they will both be totally, totally spectacular. I think that this episode we'll look back on and pick a lot of clues out. Obviously, Harmony being the inventor of the severance trip is a huge piece of plot that we get here that's very important.
Yes.
But, I think I can easily say that this is my least favorite Severance episode.
Yeah, I think it's not competitive for me either. But that's because like the vast majority of the rest of the show is just like like at like worst a 9 out of 10.
Mhm.
So that's gonna happen. What are you gonna do? And I love a swing. Take swings.
Mhm.
Never stop taking swings for sure. But the consequence of taking big swings is sometimes you don't connect. And so for
Mhm.
this one, it didn't totally connect for me. I'm very curious to get the feedback from folks who should be writing in. Severance, RHAP at gmail.com. Would love to hear alternate takes. I'm sure there's going to be people who love this episode, so I want to know about that. And I'm very
Kate Hampton.
that's right. I think we're gonna get a lot of like in defense of Hampton.
Okay.
Feedback.
I'm here for it.
Hampton, I would be if we were doing this in our spoiler-free rewatch, Amanda.
Mm.
I think I would be sending him towards a waffle party this week. Hampton.
Oh, yes.
He'd
I
be
like that.
he would
Yeah.
he would be en route to some waffles.
Sorry,
So,
sissy.
very, very interested in reevaluating the episode in the future with more context for sure. But I co-sign all of the things that you said at the end there. So send in that feedback. We're coming back with the theories and feedback show in just a few days with Melissa. Severance RHAP at gmail.com. That's Severance RHAP at gmail.com. And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, go to Knowseverance.com. It's got all the info you need for subscribing to this Severance podcast here on RHAP. We Know Scripted TV, where we are podcasting about tons of scripted TV, including The White Lotus, which is on one right now as well, which I know, Dr. Amanda, you are podcasting about over at Crying Laughing Pod.
That's right. So you can check us out, Crying Laughing Pod, where we are also covering The White Lotus. And it's just a fun show that everybody likes to talk about. So let's have lots and lots of podcasts about it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. And you can follow everything I'm doing on social media, where I'm at Dr. Amanda R. And
where are you today as people are listening to this?
If people are listening today on Friday, March 7th, at 11 a.m. at Philadelphia City Hall, I am standing up for science as part of a national day of action. There's a big rally happening in Philly. I'm very, very excited about it. I've been one of the core organizers pushing that effort. If you're in Philly, come and join us at City Hall. We've got lots of great speakers who will be talking about the importance of science and science funding and science freedom and inclusion. Because if science is not inclusive, then it's not the whole truth. So come out and check us out in Philly. And if you're not in Philly, go to standupforscience2025.org and you can find a local rally site. There's 32 official rallies across the country. A big boy one in DC featuring Bill Nye and Francis Collins and Michael Mann, the science guy himself. And even if you're not in the States, there's solidarity actions happening all over the globe. So March 7th, stand up for science and stay tuned because we've got a lot of standing up for science to do over the next few years.
All right. Well, we are grateful for your efforts, not just on the podcast, but most especially off the podcast, Dr. Amanda. So keep up the great work. Keep fighting the good fight. All of you out there, support how you can, and get us that feedback on Severance, episode 8, Sweet Vitriol. We want to hear from you. SeveranceRHAP@gmail.com. We'll be back in just a couple days answering your feedback. Until then, go flip a toboggan. Bye.